I would like to see if we can not refine your sight a little bit more, having to do with the system that is us, thinking man. I was going to try and describe and even draw out some of what I've talked about. Lo, these many, many, many's. And on the surface a bit more specifically, physically. Except we're still in the difficult position of getting up to the threshold of where ordinary intelligence can see. Because of this kind of loop system, intelligence itself, once I describe again what I'm going to describe, intelligence itself reaches right up to the level of falling off the edge of a two-dimensional table into something. Or if you want another way, its intelligence runs up to the fence that it cannot see and goes, It is the reason, among others, that I have, for the last several meetings, drug up that fairly well-known neurobiological question, just out in the ordinary realm of science, into the central nervous system, the limbic aspect of the nervous system, of them not being able to, in some way scientifically, ordinary people cannot objectively prove, ascertain, whether the central nervous system of man, in just a visceral manner, will react to a threat and then make the human organism run to where you could say, all right, it was the limbic system, it was the nervous system itself, without any benefit of thought, reacted as an animal would to impending danger, and thus man is running. And of course, while he's running, he's thinking about something, very likely something having to do with that which made him run. I think that'd be a safe guess in most instances, unless of course he was trying to distract himself and do the multiplication tables. But on the other hand, they cannot, as they put it, conclusively decide if perchance man intellectually perceived, at least as quickly, and perhaps a split second before, perceived the danger, and that intellectually went, my, there is a hungry lion facing me. Somebody has that lion aimed at me, and then runs, then takes the rest of the organism with it. The reason I brought that up several times is not, as you should know, to direct anyone's attention to any study of the physiology of man simply. But the thing is, there is no way out of that loop using ordinary intelligence. And I've brought it out because of the fact that people spend 12, 14 years to become a neurobiologist, to study this. And they still cannot come to any conclusion, and in a sense they have all the physical facts right before them. And it's not that they need more statistics, and it's not that there is something hidden in the physiology of man. They've seen it all. It is, and they of course cannot recognize this, it is that they are at the threshold of human intelligence. That the very thing that they say they cannot tell, as that is, let us call it the flee cycle, part of the fight or flee. That here's a person running, and they cannot say whether it is the limbic, the passionate part of the human nervous system making the person run. And they're saying, I'm running because I'm afraid. They cannot absolutely say that, nor can they say that the person first said, I'm afraid, therefore I'm going to run. Now it is to the point that perhaps if you tried to bring this up to somebody in the field, they'd say, yeah, I remember us talking about that back in college, back in school, and it's really moot, because what does it prove? They're somewhat in the position, I also point out, that physics can treat light both as particles or waves. That they can say, well, on one hand it looks like this, on one hand it looks like that. That is, on one hand it looks like humans run because they're frightened, and on the other hand you can look at it and say, well, they're frightened because they're running. That the person decided that lion's going to get me a split second and started to run, and it took a split second for the rest of the nervous system to go, what the hell's going on here? And it scared it before the nervous system even realized it. They could say, well, it doesn't matter, because whatever the ad hoc situation is, we can treat it in this manner or the other. and therefore is everything else, like the questions of environment versus heredity, chicken and the egg. It doesn't matter. They just abandon it. As well they should, because they can't go any further with it. I wanted to try and help you refine your sight of it a little bit after all my descriptions of that. It is still not to try and give some lesson physically, because that would keep you as distracted. That would keep you at the same level as them not being able to decide whether you run because you're frightened or vice versa. But after all my descriptions and after that preface, let me see if I can refine it for a while, because I've been talking up to this point and it's fairly simple, and some of you should be able to make the quantum jump now. Consider the loop of the nervous system. My old drawing. But then consider this additional loop, or this additional version of it, and that in a more physiologically based, just an ordinarily based description of cutting it up, start this part. Assume this is more or less in thirds, is down here, that most people would think of as simply the life of the body, that we're talking about all kinds of terms. There is no all-inclusive term for this, neither, especially medically, but there is none that I can give you that is once and for all workable. It's all ad hoc, but you can consider it the visceral level, the animal level, it is the life support level. All right? Everybody can understand that. And then you have what would seem to be the emotional level, which I have been saying, and this is still not an anatomy lesson because there's no such clear-cut division even in the neurobiological sciences, but it is generally referred to as the limbic side of the human nervous system, the limbic system. But they can't tell where it begins and where it ends. That is, they cannot tell whether it's reacting to input from out there, which sometimes it evidently is, or sometimes it obviously is. But then at other times it just seems to do, such as if the system, the whole organism of man began to run and you suddenly grabbed it and stopped reality and said, "Why are you running?" It may have been just a split second before this system understood why it was running and went, "I don't know." But upstairs, they're frightened, they're scared as hell. And when they're scared up there, I'm scared. In other words, they cannot tell at some given instance whether the input that the system, the limbic system, is reacting to actually came from out there or whether it came from in here. And that's when they've again hit the horizon of ordinary intelligence, because there's nowhere to go with that. Because then they got to say, well, how did it get in me? And it's just like, never mind all that. And never mind all that. What's the problem at hand? Should we treat it like particles or waves? There's no sense going any further with this, they'd say, which is them saying we can't go any further. So you've got what seems to be the place of human emotions, the limbic system, and then you've got, up at this end, the cerebral cortex. But now, I said I wanted to try and refine it. This is real simple. But it took us, I felt like, to take you for a while, around a kind of route, to consider all sorts of aspects, to bring it to a fairly succinct level, is to consider it like this. It is simply the verbal and the non-verbal levels. But even if I draw a line somewhere through here, it would still be misleading, because that loop does not exist simply in 2 dimensions like that, and it does not exist simply in 3 dimensions. But there is enough validity to that that should be able to refine some of you people's thinking of it and consideration of it, because you can describe, you can, through your own experience, realize that there is a non-verbal level. It cannot be ascertained by ordinary intelligence in the laboratory, in the morgue, in the classroom. But through your own experience, you can hear me describe that we're talking about at the nonverbal level, the life support level, that you're talking about basically breathing, which is the intake and the output of the respiratory system, and you're talking about eating and excreting, the input of the digestive system. Now, if there was somebody still on this planet, which there's not that fits into the general classification of being the bourgeoisie, the middle class of the city, there are no people left that do not have a nervous system that is activated up to the cortical level. We're not talking about people who are brain dead or brain damaged. But if there were such people, if you were one, you could eat, you could find food, you could eat, you could go to the bathroom, perhaps at ill-timed or ill-appropriate places, but you could do all that and you could breathe in and out, which is eating and excreting. You could do all of that without any conversation between you and anyone else, without any conversation with yourself. There is, at the verbal level, a similar situation wherein people are engaged in intake and output. There is consumption and there is excretion. There is the continual transfer of energy, and it's going on with the digestive system, with the respiratory system, and with the nervous system itself. And with the nervous system itself, what I mean now is I am not pointing at the belly or the lungs, we're pointing at this. It takes in just as much as the respiratory system takes in oxygen and puts out CO2, the same way that your stomach takes in a zucchini sandwich and puts out stuff I don't want to talk about. This takes in information. It takes in energy. It takes in a product. It digests it and it puts it back out in an altered form. This is directly connected to the dialogue. This is directly connected to me hinting, and now I'll go ahead and admit, since you've had 48 hours, that one of the voices in everyone's dialogue is life. It's not just a joke, but in specific ways it manifests itself. And one of the ways is that everyone takes their own inner voices seriously. But it is not a parallel with others. Now I mean something specifically by serious. Well, all right, a synonym would be serious. That's what I mean. I thought that would cover it. By serious, what I mean to say is serious. There is no way that an ordinary person, just in the bell curve of the bourgeoisie of city life, ordinary intelligence, no ordinary person takes their voice as being anything less than serious. Now, I can make statements and talk about everything silly, and that a lot of you will laugh along and nod. But no ordinary person thinks that their voice, the inner dialogue, is anything less than serious. Now, if for some reason I were to engage them and they would participate in some conversation, some discussion, people would admit this, or might even state this, that at times I do not have sufficient information, at times I might be so tired, so hungry, so starved for oxygen, that my internal conversations might not be up to par. I might have insufficient or flawed input, so that what I decide, so that what I think, so that what my inner dialogue covers could be less than adequate. But that is still serious. The admission is proof that it's serious, that I take this inner dialogue as being serious, and if there is at some times a flaw in it. If at times my own serious inner conversation seems to be operating in a manner that we might describe as transiently anonymous, it's still serious, because a mistake is what? Serious. If indeed I am trying to ponder some problem, if I'm thinking about something, and maybe in the beginning I do not even realize that the information I've received is partially flawed, that within itself, going no further, that's serious, because a person can make a damn mistake, which is serious. Well, I think you understand now what I'm talking about by serious. Nobody takes themselves as being silly. I don't mean their behavior, the inner voices. Now, we're not talking about people who, the rest of the bourgeoisie, the rest of the bell curve, the ordinary middle class of humanity would say this person's head wrapper is coming loose. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the people that's in the mainstream of human intelligence. They take their own dialogue, all of their inner voices, as serious. But they do not, no one treats other voices in general, the voices within other people, not just the overt, but the inner voices in other people. Men do not treat the other voices as being equally serious. Now, the opposite of serious in this, from this particular view, is not silly. It doesn't mean that, but they do not take them serious in the manner that what's going on in someone else has some direct bearing, has some pertinent bearing on the reality of what's going on out here, which mine does. My mind might be temporarily flawed because of me receiving erroneous information, but I am seriously trying to crunch up this information, whereas this is not necessarily true with other people. It's simply not. Not regardless of how they may act, regardless of what they may say. It's a known fact. Everybody knows this. Every individual knows this, that's a known fact. My inner voices are serious. Other people's are open to serious questions. Generally, they're not as serious as mine. Not their spoken conversation, but their inner voices. History proves me correct. Everyday affairs prove me correct. My inner voices prove me correct because I can just sit and watch TV. I can listen to the radio. I can sit like Walt Whitman and watch my fellow man go by and hear them talk and realize, without me even engaging them, I can hear them talk. I can watch the human intercourse and realize that other people's voices are not generally as equally serious as my own. Or else history, else everyday affairs would not be in the state they're in. If everyone's inner voice was as serious as mine. A totally unrecognized fact, a reality, and something that all of you should know by now. I forgot I was going to start for a while opening up each evening with an opening thought. Now, the opening thought for tonight. Better late than never. An opening thought for tonight, and it's this. Hey, don't laugh, you're next. Subtly shift. That which is verbalized is rendered more complex. That is one of the three-dimensional, discernible, even describable operations of the higher end of the human nervous system, that is, of the intellect. Because that which is verbalized is rendered more complex. The highest end of the human nervous system right now, what is generally referred to as the cortical cerebral cortex, is responsible for, has the continuing potential for, but its primary responsibility is to enrich that which it finds of interest, which it seems to perceive, which it seems to think about at any given time, to enrich it by speaking about it. Now there could be some, I guess, that could have pop in periodically and hear some of what's said here during these tapings and feel as though there is a general attack on talk, especially a whole lot of talk. Wrong. I'm saying this for the camera. Wrong, no. The intellect is supposed to talk. The end of the nervous system, wherein it now has loops within loops, wherein one part of the individual organism, the individual system, can apparently talk to itself, can apparently take its own temperature, take its own pulse, try and say, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What relationship to what I'm feeling, thinking, experiencing does it have to what's going on out there? That it seems to have, even though its name may not be Dave Lennox, it seems to have a kind of thermostat internally wherein it can run in this whole loop. It can run in smaller loops. It can run in loops with apparently just from the cortex to the body itself, like how am I feeling, physically feeling, or how am I feeling emotionally? Am I mad? Why am I mad? Is there any justification for my madness? Is my madness making, and then the loop can expand to down here, take this in. Am I been so mad so long, my stomach's beginning to hurt. Maybe I should ease up on being mad till tomorrow. Well, maybe 4 days of being this mad is enough. I'm getting dizzy. The part of the nervous system that can talk has as one of its responsibilities, not of course the digestion of pancakes, does not have the absolute feel of human emotion as just a side effect that I won't say has anything specific, but also remember that the brain itself has no feeling. But its responsibility in the digestion of input is to enrich it, not just eat food as the digestive system would do, which enriches the planet and it transforms energy for other systems, but by the intellect talking about something. There's ways that I have at particular times used examples wherein I know the impression that it made was that certain kinds of talk debase what's being discussed. I pointed out to you, they're attempting to do this. There are things that if you could accomplish it, if you could do it, is don't ever talk about it. And most of you have got some personal brush, if not a fender bender, of some kind of comprehension of that. That don't talk to anybody. Don't tell somebody, boy, I quit so-and-soing. Don't even tell you when you get good at it, which should take you 2 or 3 seconds after you understand. Don't do it to anybody else. Don't do it to you. So, but now, it is not a debasing of what goes on in the general flow of city life with ordinary people. The talking about something that the intellect notes, it doesn't matter what, whatever any individual's intellect seems to fall on at that particular time, and it discusses it. It notes it in some manner, whether overtly or whether to itself, that you think about what it is. It is a process in general of enrichment. It makes it more complex. Now, from another view, which shows you the limits, if you need to be shown again at all, of three-dimensional consciousness, it's both. It debases, it makes it more simplistic, but it makes it more complex. That the digestion of intellectual input, the kind of information that the brain itself is in charge of, by noting it, by speaking about it, it makes it more complex. at that level. Thus you have such historically well-known phenomenon that I'm sure that you think that I've kicked around as criticism, theoretical resistance to certain ideas or whole systems of ideas, questions that people continue to seem to proffer having to do with things that you may think at some particular moment are self-evident, and people keep discussing them. Complaints. Anything a human says in general at one time, I don't mean across the board for all of humanity, but at least that one person at one time was being charged with the responsibility of their intake of whatever it is they're talking about, such as, I can't stand religion. Let's say we got some guy that part of his hobby is being professional, I can't stand religionist, professional atheist. And he says, I can't stand religion. All right, to him, that is, to that system that was called him, call him Siegfried Jr. The first time or two he said that, it enriched the energy that he was taking in as represented by the word religion and everything that connoted. And he may have enriched the energy many times after that by taking on variations. But the first time he may say, I hate religion. The next time he may say, well, more specifically, I hate the Catholic religion. And then later he may say, I especially hate the Jesuits. And he may say, well, so later every time he says I hate religion, it almost, or Catholic religion, it almost has ceased to enrich it anymore. And so then he turns around and he says, well, let's see. I hate Islam. Good Lord, now that I've looked into it, Islam is dumber and more worthy of my hate than Christianity was. And so now he's enriched to start off and call religion as being some bundle of energy itself. Then he's taken part of it and he's almost lost the ability to enrich it. That is the one part known as Christianity or Catholicism. So now he started on Islam. But in general, the comments made, the intellect taking any note, which it's got to talk, either to itself or to somebody, to take any note of it, it is a form of enrichment. It makes it more complex than what it was in that one instance. And that's all that matters. There could be some outside observer. This does not happen in life, but if an ordinary person, if I could suddenly grab their brain and stick it in this guy's brain and make them get right together, this person could say, and be within their rights, they could be wired up to have a different digestion of religion. And they could realize what was going on inside of this guy's wiring, inside of his brain, and he could say, wait a minute, his denunciation of religion is not an enrichment. This is this other guy talking now. His notation is, it is a debasement. He is starving it. He is losing part of the nutrition that was available in religion, which could be true from another view, from another nervous system. But from the person saying it, the person noting whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the area is. It doesn't matter whether they're apparently pro or con. Their notation of it, per se, the speaking of it itself renders it more complex. It's my personal opinion that you should think about that for a second. See? If you actually thought about it, it got a little more complex. It may have been, wait a minute, now I don't really understand it. As always, I described that part of the purpose of the verbal level is to make that which is noted verbally more complex. There is another way to look at it, which almost sounds like the opposite, but it's not. And this is, rather than to enrich that which is being noted by the verbal level, is a kind of stabilizing of the present level by mechanical really unnoted repetition of some sort. Such as, in my instance, if it got to the point that this guy just sort of as a knee-jerk or an intellectually knee-jerk reaction is every time he hears religion, he goes, ha! Religion's a bunch of salami. And so you can wake the guy up almost in the middle of the night or after you had 4 or 5 drinks and say something about, you know, I wish we had more religion around here. And he just goes, religion? What a bunch of salami. It gets to the point that it, just in his instance, got nothing to do with religion, got nothing to do with the person talking to him. Right this second from my description, I'm artificially cutting out reality into this one guy. To him, it's reached some sort of level of stability in him that is the bundle of energy reflected in him by the word religion. Now it's almost as though it's like somebody's smoking and they forget their smoke. They smoke so long and their nervous system is up to the point, the respiratory system, it reacts to it in a certain way, and they're just kind of what's known as, I guess, sort of a straight line addiction. They smoke just enough that they get that kind of reaction that their non-verbal level is accustomed to from the nicotine. And they can smoke and not even realize it. They can smoke and lay down a cigarette and pick up and light another one and forget this one. That's somebody that hears religion and goes, ah, salami, just fuck religion, hell with religion. It has, in a sense, stabilized in that person to where this energy comes in and their reaction to it is now a kind of unthinking, personally non-nutritious reaction, and it manifests itself whether they do it overtly or not. It's this kind of repetitious daydream, repetitious internal conversation they have that every time they hear religion, every time they see the Pope on TV, every time they're doing a news coverage about anything, the camera swings around and hits a church. There is a kind of reaction internally that is just mechanically, it is non-nutritional. The intellect almost has no note of it, in the same way that a person can smoke or be drinking something and just forget what they're doing. It just becomes so mechanical. It can do that, but it's still not wasted. What it has done is they produced a kind of stability at a level that has finally been determined, and there's no more real transfer of meaningful energy going on vis-a-vis this person in this particular area, in this case religion. Now, that would offer up a question if you fought into that, and that is, which one are you going to do? Which one will you be satisfied with? If you run the regular course of life, the answer is already a fait accompli, because all of you are old enough by now, if you'd been left to your own devices rather than fall into my devices, the nourishment of almost everything would have been gone. That is, you're grown. That is, you know who you are. That is, you have your opinions. That is, you know what to think. That is, you darn well know what to feel about most things in life. You darn well by now, that is, know up from down. You, that is, by God, have been around the block once or twice. And as it were, by God, it's not all that easy to pull the old salami over my eyes. The alternative that I was trying to point toward verbally is that it continues to happen at levels that may not be nourishing the individual, that is you. But the potential is still there, because that is one of the primary responsibilities of the verbal level, is to enrich that which it knows by talking about it. Now the question is, can you enrich that previously, mechanically, automatically produced situation that has now reached the automatic pilot level, so that you do not continue to note? That is, you speak of it, either externally or in the internal voices, which are serious voices. If you take time to note it at the ordinary level, yes, they're serious. But you are saying the same thing. You're making the same note about the same things. That is, you enriched it as much as you ordinarily could have long time ago. Yeah. Long time ago. And now all it is the continual repetition of your notes about religion, short people, tall people, fat people, economics, whatever. All it is now is a continuing stabilization of your present level. It is the reinforcement of your present level of nervous system health. Can any of you see a connection between that and, from the last several tapings, me pointing out that there is a resistance, in fact, after a certain point, an inability for the nervous system at the verbal level to use that which is new. That which is really new, because that which is new to you. That which is new, and I mean by really new, and you must know that I must mean something other than just new, and I do. That which is really new is alive, and it's demanding that it does something. That which is new is tied to that which initially produced an enrichment, produced a condition that was more complex regarding that which you noted. All right, an example. Listen good, because this is a good example. Got two states, and they are followers of, participants of, let's say, the northern religion and the western religion. They're side by side on this little island. We don't think this is a metaphor for anybody in particular, because it doesn't matter. I'm just making it up. But here they are. Their religions are different. Their cultures are different. Their genetic background may be different. They're at war continually. If not overtly, it is always the threat of war, the stress. Now let's take one person, an individual, over here in the northern side. Based upon what this individual nervous system would say, the verbal notation that this person has made historically and in their lifetime is, the people of the Western religion, this adjoining state, are absolute, immediate, continual threats to our well-being, even mine individually. They're less civilized than we are. They're less sophisticated. They are almost the Vandals reborn in the 20th century, even the 21st. The person's wiring system sees them undeniably, verbally, and as best they could, if I could just dissect them in an artificial manner, even non-verbally, they see the Westerners, the Western religion, the Western culture, the Western race as absolute threats to the person's nervous system. What is the only possible known three-dimensional reaction to that? Well, you see this other state, this other group, this institution, other individuals as an enemy. What are you going to do with an enemy? A threat. Well, once you recognize a threat, you've got to dislike it. Hate them. You got to be prepared to defend yourself against them, and or you got to be prepared perhaps to make a first peremptory strike to attack them. It is all at the level, non-verbally, certainly, to divide that artificially again, but sometimes meaningfully, at that level, that kind of hatred, although you wouldn't know the word hatred at that level, is quite in order. But now what would be new information? Bring it back to the scenario where my example, my individual, has a verbal level. What would be new information to that person? Well, if you thought of any examples, look at all the number of examples that you're able to think of. But it should have struck you, I would hope, that none of them seemed satisfactory. At least you thought that it wasn't really what I had in mind. What would be new information to an individual regarding somebody else, some other group that is undeniably, at that level, their enemy? Wherein their proper response, their proper current thinking is, I hate them, I fear them, I hate them, I've either got to attack them or constantly be on guard that I am not attacked by them. What if I took this person and I said, well, all right, you seem, I wouldn't say this, but parenthetically to you guys, I'd say, all right, you seem, by ordinary standards, to be fairly intelligent. I bet you don't like this situation. Am I correct? And the person would say, no, let's assume. Do you see any way out? They might say no. They might even want to give me some history that better people than I have tried. We've had whole committees on both sides of our boundary try and come to some satisfactory arrangement so that each of us do not feel threatened, because I understand they feel threatened by us, which is, of course, further proof that other people's inner voices are not serious, because I'm not the threat. And what if I said, all right, individually, you seem to be fairly intelligent. Now, notice some of the books here in your library, and I bet I know some of your fields of interest, obviously serious interest on your part. Would I be incorrect to speculate that you have even to yourself tried to talk to yourself and tried to tell yourself that this is unprofitable for me to actually hate these people so much, even though they have killed part of my family, even though they have a higher crime rate, even though they slip over the border, that there is justifiable, statistical, practical evidence that these people are a threat, and I do hate them. I just see them and I hate them. I can't help it. But you are correct. I've thought about it individually many times, and I thought, this is not good. I've even studied some religions and philosophical systems, and I've tried to talk to myself, and I cannot seem to come up with anything that will shift the way I think about them. Of course, they're ordinary. They'd probably say the way I feel about them. We got to turn the tape over. What would be new information? Now try and put yourself in the position of my made-up example, because all of you, if you belong involved with this, your nervous system should be able to respond and feel some of that, of how that is, how that could be. That this individual is faced without any area of serious questioning by threats from other groups, another group, a whole other state, a whole other nation. And it's hatred, which is the other side of fear. And the person has said, I have even individually, I have theoretically, spiritually, philosophically, whatever an ordinary person could come up with, say that I have tried to rearrange my thinking. I've tried to justify, I've tried to clean up my feelings toward these people, because I know that it's not good. I still may have to defend myself and keep one eye, keep my doors locked, but this continual feeling of me just having a visceral reaction of hatred, blah, blah, blah. What would be new information? Now, when I asked you to consider it, and I said that you should have really hit that horizon of three-dimensional intelligence, like you're not sure what I meant or anything that you thought about, surely wasn't it. What would ordinary intelligence say might be new information? Because you assume I'm trying to go somewhere with this, trying to drag you off to look around the corner. What is I may be hinting up until now about new information? What would it be? Well, let's see. Ordinary intelligence might come up with something like, well, new information might be if this guy was suddenly told, hey, these other guys, you got them all wrong, they're actually real good people. That ain't new information. That's simply further signs that other people's inner voices are not serious. Because I've already described you. I mean, this is my story. I made it up, so I'm the one that makes the rules. I already described you that there is validity, even at the nonverbal level, for my made-up guy, my example, for him to hate and to fear these other people. I already told you that, so don't try and pull that on me. So what would be new information? What else could it be? Some kind of transcendental voice come from the heavens and say, hey, don't hate those folks, I'll take care of it. You guys are big boys and girls. What could it be? Is that enough of that? Is that the sign of a bad actor? All you can do is look off to the left, and the only variation is look off to the right? Stanislavski would roll over in his grave if he had one. All right, let me give you what it is that I've got in mind. Super subtle. It's right out there at the horizon, and you may miss it. Got nothing to do at all with morality. Nothing whatsoever to do with any religion, any kind of spiritual idea. It has to do with chemistry. But since words have to do also with electricity, and words have everything to do with the verbal level, then what I'm going to describe, some of you people's verbal level is going to run like two little dogs on magnets and try to be drawn to each other, and you're going to think, ah, yeah, that. No. You've heard it. Similar things, but you heard it somewhere else. You heard it back in the city. You heard it with voices that were, oh, I don't know, either too serious or not serious enough. Here is what would be new information. Here is what the nervous system is not wired up to take. But here is the point at which you can start going around the corner, get over the horizon. It is information that is truly new, and it is alive. If I told a person they could hear it, or the person could do it to themselves, let's try it that way for a second. Might as well get dirtier with you people instead of me, keep saying me talking to the guy. What if the guy, or the gal, if her name was Grunhilde, I assume. I'd certainly hate to meet a German man named Grunhilde, but at any rate, what if the guy, after all these years of realizing that I hate these people, I hate them on sight, I'm afraid of them, I hate them when I hear their name, I even see a word that starts with a W, like Western religion, I see something that starts with a W, like I see somebody wearing Wrangler jeans and I just hate them already. And I should be able to do something. And the person tried studying religion, they tried becoming a Zen monk, they tried chanting, they tried doing all kinds of things, they tried self-hypnosis, they tried telling themselves, I will not hate the Western people, I will not hate the Western. And nothing worked, and they realized that this guy did, that he was after something, and this is some kind of little small something that's staying in my way. I should be able to get past this. What would be new information that he or she could come up with? They could try the same thing I described, that you could have, that is, your old nervous system could have come up with. It could try and justify it, and it could try and say things, well, wait a minute, we're all God's children. We're all little creatures of the great cosmic gods. They're just as good as I am, just not in this lifetime or some shit. So the guy could try all that, and it still doesn't work. What would be actual new information, the kind of information that would be correct, the kind of information that I previously described to you, that the motto, one of the possible mottos in the city would be a resistance to this by saying, new information, no thanks for me, I'm driving. It could be dangerous, because if it's new information, the stuff could be correct, and therefore it'd be demanding. It would be alive. I don't need that kind of stuff in my car. It's like somebody, I got to drive home. It's like somebody, you went past them, they were saying new information. Before you knew it, they threw a snake in your car. I don't need that. What would be new information? How could you try and change the entire reaction of your nervous system, all the way from the visceral, the nonverbal, all the way up into the limbic and into the cortex of talking? That is, that even hearing their name, that at times you don't hear their name. You don't know why, but there seems to be an input internally. Remember that? There doesn't even seem to be an external one. You're just sitting around looking out, and you see a cloud formation. You see a tree, and suddenly you think of the Western religion, and you hate them. Now, apparently there was no external pertinent input that caused it. What would be new information? What could somebody use? What would be new information that the nervous system is not prepared to digest? What would be input that the digestion of such would require, would demand effort, and would in fact change? It'd be like finding a brand new food of some kind that when you ate it, your stomach had to go, wait a minute. And your stomach had to at least go and make a slight shift because it never had food exactly like this. And so it had to go, it did a little thing and it finally, but it could not take the food and run through its normal, unthinking, unanalyzed, I'm smoking, don't know I'm smoking, I'm drinking, don't know I'm drinking, I'm talking, don't know I'm talking. Suddenly the system has to go, wait. That it has to rearrange itself, or else it'd be like the stomach trying to digest a billiard ball. It's just going to go through. You just don't even notice it. I can't deal with it. No thanks. I don't want that. I just can't hear it. What was that? I didn't know. I didn't even hear that. What would be such a new piece of information? I've asked that so many times, and so many of you I keep looking at, I'm tempted not to even respond to it myself. It makes me want to grab everybody's nervous system if I could get you on tape at some other time and squeeze it. We're right at the absolute threshold of people wondering, well, what to do, what to do. Here it is, your nervous system hates another system. Individually, collectively, a whole institution of other nervous system. It hates them in your system. Somewhere in the part that talks, the verbal part of your system, for no reason, because the talking part is not moral. It's not spiritual, if we were dividing it up again artificially, but sometimes meaningfully, into just one part. What could it do? What possible information could it come up with? What could it say to itself that could affect this hatred? Of course, hatred is just a chemical reaction, remember. Hatred's a word. There would be no such thing as hatred if you didn't have a cortical cerebral cortex. You couldn't hate without that because you wouldn't know you hated. You could be mad, but you wouldn't even know you're mad since you wouldn't know the word mad. But at any rate, you couldn't hate. You understand that by now. You could not note that I hate. And if you can't note it, you can't do it. What new information? Should I actually respond to my own? All right. I hate to do it. Ordinary intelligence. I know I've been through this. I'm trying to squeeze you people up to the point that, like some of you, I hope that you're going to run the fluid up to your brain kind of like a pimple, so that when I do it in a minute, maybe somebody will go. Just don't squirt on me. The verbal level, supported even by the non-verbal level of your system, hates and fears these other systems. And this system, the guy I made up, has tried everything generally recognized as potentially helpful. He tried to become a good religious person of some persuasion. He tried to justify. He tried to explain away to himself even. He tried to deny to himself. He tried to excuse them because they didn't have the same background. He tried everything, and he still hated and feared them. What could he do? What new chemical reaction could he attempt to feed into this loop that could make him go, that would be alive, that could change his own nervous system? All right, I'm going to force myself. See, I'm trying to force myself to say it to him. He could tell himself, if he knew how to do it and knew what it meant, he could tell himself, the new information is this: I'm going to try and help those people. If the person knew what they were doing, if you were capable of doing that to yourself, the words "I'm going to help those people" are just the verbal notations of a chemical reaction. In the beginning, of course, it is an attempted chemical reaction, but if you knew what you were doing, you would feel it and you would understand that that is what to do if I want to do something about this particular situation. And if you really get good at it, you don't have to try and actually help the other people, since I described it in that way, but you have to take the information now as part of your own verbal system, that you can no longer think of those people. Whether you see them, think about them, read about them, you have to coevally, every time you think about them, think, I'm going to help them. That is my one thought toward these people. That is the one thing I have added. The rest of it, God knows where it came from. My nervous system was wired up to feel this way. Forget the good historical or contemporaneous evidence that they should be feared or hated. Never mind all that. I was obviously born with that. I could not escape from it. What have I added to it? What I've added to it is, I'm going to help them. Period. No reason. I'm not going to help them because of so-and-so. I'm not going to help them because they need help. I'm not going to help them because I want to be a good Christian. I'm not going to help them because I want to be a good existentialist humanist. I'm not going to help them because I want to be a good neighbor. I'm not going to help them so that they will approve of me. I'm not going to help them so that they'll leave me alone. This is the new information. Based upon everything I spent all the time setting this up for, of all the hatred, all the fear, it's simply this: beginning and end of the note that you would make, or this person would make, I'm going to help them. That is new information. But note that what I'm calling new information is not new verbally, because the sentence, everybody has heard that. I'm going to help them. You've probably said it in some context in your life, surely. There's nothing exotic about the arrangement of the letters and the words. But in the condition, in the situation that I have described to you, that I set up, I'm going to help them would be absolute, new, dangerous, correct, demanding, alive information. I would encourage you to at least note that it is not the opposite of hating them. It is not the opposite of fearing them. Now, I would assume that most people would think, well, which I warned you about, it almost has some sort of tenuous, kind of spiritual, echoing kind of sound of trying to be nice to your fellow man, even if your fellow man is not nice to you, and that kind of stuff. It's not even that simple. It's not the opposite of any of it. It is not in any way that is reasonable, that is good food for the verbal level, does it offer, does it promise that this will stop you from hating and fearing those people. The only thing it is, if you can begin to see it at any time, the only thing it is new. It verges on. I can see and I can smell you people out there on tape, the too many of you think you're missing it. It verges on apparently being irrelevant. I mean, it sounds close that I'm going to help them. That almost sounds like trying to love your enemy. But it's not. The people that I hate for good reason, the people that I fear for good reason, instead of me hating and fearing them, internally, the internal dialogue, my own voice is hate and fear them. Instead of that, then every time that I speak of them, that is, anytime my verbal level notes them, I will simultaneously note that I had decided that my new piece of information, the chemical jolt I put into myself was, I'm going to help them. Those words are not magic. You say, I should help them. That is, it's a decision I'm making on my part. I'm not necessarily going to do it right now, but I will never again think of these. I will never again, at the verbal level, note this group of people, these other systems, individual or collectively. Never again will I note them without simultaneously noting, along with my hate and fear. I'm not assuming it's going away. My hate and fear is still there, but I will simultaneously also note, I should help them. I will help them. Not necessarily now. Remember, I said all I meant to say. I will help them. That's it. That is new information. If you understand how to do it, you can no longer, it's not that you can any longer fear and hate them. No, no, no. Don't worry about losing that. But now, the notation of these people, the experience of your fear and hatred is now more complex. It is not the same thing. Your fear and hatred of them then does not even deserve, is not even subject to the term fear and hatred. It's something else. Well, as that other great Southern philosopher Joe South noted, I didn't promise you a rose garden. Don't write and ask me where to find his books, because he's not a great he's not a great Southern philosopher. He's just a figure of speech. He's better than that. Great Southern drinker and songwriter. Would anyone care to note, as long as I was right here, that men's fear of death is an uncontrollable and an unaccounted reflection of their fear of the really new? It's the ultimate. You can think about it. You can note it up here if you're ordinary in all sorts of ways. You may note it up here where it has been already noted for you by other simple, serious voices in life's own nervous system, that, well, after that may come the day of reckoning. Or worse than that, after this, you know, they may end up in shipment Omaha. It is the ultimate new. There is no description of it. It is beyond the horizon of any ordinary 3D history, of any 3D experience. And what's a greater fear to most people? Almost everybody in the bell curve is death. Because it could be correct. It's obviously new, and it's obviously demanding. It is just too new for me. No thanks. None for me, thanks. I'm living. I'm driving, so I wouldn't care for any today. Note something else. Once you have a full continuing recognition that the inner dialogue consists of a dialogue between you and life, and that voice, that ear, the other recipient, the other partner in the dialogue is life, then it's time to note that life is talking to itself through you. Whereas if there was even a modicum of verbal notation of this out in the city, or if I tried to describe it to an ordinary person right quickly, their first conclusion, if they got along this path at all, would be just the opposite. But then all my musings to myself, that is, people talking to themselves, actually what they're doing is really talking to life. And I would have to admit that it's always, you know, that's real close. In other words, you're just 100%, that is 50%, which is 100%, wrong. All that is, you're 50% or 100% right. You're that close. In other words, it's just the opposite. In other words, don't worry about it. But what you have got through humans is life now talking to itself. But what you should be concerned about, because the place you've got the easiest to study, the immediate, is through you, individual, whatever the hell is going on. The dialogue is life talking to itself through you. But then further note how slow, how circuitously life thinks and life acts as witnessed by your own thought processes. Or, as they laughingly like to call it in the city, the march of history. You can either look at that apparently has been going on external to you, or take the easy way out and just look in here and look at your own thinking. On a good day, good meal, plenty of rest, that is, look over your whole life. Your own thinking has been what? You're going to deny the description I gave of life, of its processes. You're going to deny that your thinking has been, and I feel like I'm being charitable now we got the individual. I'll just say it's been slow. At least I didn't say glacially. Has your thinking moved? Let's forget about this since the last time you noticed. Has it moved since 1947? 42, 57 to you young whippersnappers. Has it moved? And if it did seem to move, did it go anywhere? Yes, I now, in a repetitious manner, I continue to note to myself what I think about everything. Just, just to be sure that I'm still me, that I'm in here. It is a witness at your level, and if you could see in other people, if you recognize that it's still the voice of life in them, and everyone thinks that the voice is unique in you, and you think that the voice is only serious in you, and it's less so in everybody else, but if you saw that it's not true, then you would also see that at this level, when things apparently make some discernible move, it is the exception, because things do move at the horizon of ordinary perception in a glacial manner, but it is stability. It is also within a given lifetime, and all you need to do is look within yourself thus far. It is working absolutely in a circuitous fashion. That is, you think the same thing over and over and over. Or if you try to think something different, what happens? You end up saying, well, wait a minute. Did the chicken come first or did the egg? Am I running because I'm frightened, or am I frightened because I'm running? Do I think therefore I am? Or is it that I am and therefore I think? Life is talking to itself through man, and it does everything through individuals, from thinking, I'm thinking too slow and too circuitously, to criticizing itself, that I do think in too much of a roundabout and too much of a simplistic manner. It also thinks I think and operate in a manner far too and unnecessarily complex. It thinks all of that. If not, there would be an out there. Except it wouldn't be an out there to you, it'd be an out there to life. And if there is an out there to life, you better forget about it. Because you can even see that there ain't no out there to you. So don't worry about what is an out there to life if there is one. It is the same situation as people believing that there is such a thing as the imaginary. That one sign of intelligence would be that you only deal with that which is real, not that which is imaginary. That we only deal, us educated people, let's say in the city, us sane people, we only deal with voices ideas that actually exist, not with ideas that are imaginary. What they're saying is, if you want to take a side step real quick, what they're saying is, we only deal with sensory information. Of course, again, the nervous system at the city level can't even go this far because it seems to take all the fun out, which is not the problem, but it takes all the wind out, which is not the problem, which runs them back to the circuitous course, and there's no way off of it. But it's this. That what I think, what my voices and those who agree with me think, is in some way real and could be in some way separated from less serious voices. That even at the very visceral level, everything that I and everyone else takes in is coming through the senses. Therefore, people who say that they see ghosts, we're talking about imaginary information. Because the only thing you can see is that which is going to come in through the visual system, go into the brain, and be reported as, I see a chair, I see a cup, I see a camera. But something is wrong. We're not talking about the real. When I'm standing there and someone else says, look over there, isn't that the spirit of Edgar Allan Poe? And there's nothing there. But what they cannot deal with then is, well, wait a minute. You forget where I started this evening about that loop, and there's no way in and no way out. How did the brain get this information? This person that says, I see so-and-so. Well, what you're seeing is imaginary. Well, that may well be, but I'm seeing it. Yeah, but what you're seeing, I don't know, it's just not serious. Because what I see is serious. In fact, I only see that which is serious. And of course, I only smell that which is serious, taste that which is serious, feel that which is serious. If the information does not come in and it is serious out there, that actually exists, then it's imaginary. It is not worthy of my serious consideration. Life does all of that. And it has everyone, as it turns out, this is not the purpose, but in a sense has everyone ending up in a kind of armed confrontation of believing that you're only separated by a band of dangerous, hateful heathens just across the border from you, which is just outside your skin. The person right next to you, whether it be an individual or them representative of a whole group of people, that I am surrounded by Philistines, infidels, Visigoths, dangerous, hateful, stupid, unserious people right there. Life has got you, that is, it's thinking to itself, thinking that, and you don't know that the person right there could be thinking the same thing, but not necessarily. They could be thinking what apparently is the opposite. And it's all going on simultaneously. But can ordinary intelligence perceive that? Right, yeah. Fat chance. It's impossible. Before we get completely out, let me see if you can find any connection between that and let me pick up, remember, the white elephant of that which apparently is a gift of some value, even a sacred, but a valuable gift given to somebody that can, and probably will, could at least, prove ruinous. And yet you got it and you can't do anything with it. The king sent it and there it is. Can you see that connected also to the aspect that I pointed out a night or so ago of being too simple in a situation that was too complex or more complex, or vice versa, being too complex in a situation that was mechanically simple and wherein you should be acting in a more direct manner. All right, can you see that? The white elephant. And another one that I've already mentioned, of life continuing to offer up information that is ill-timed urges, drives, chemical hungers in the system that are ill-timed. Daydreams, that is the inner conversation that is ill-timed. What could be more ill-timed to anybody under any conditions almost that you can think of than receiving a sacred white elephant from the king? Is there a proper time to receive such a gift? Is there a proper time at the ordinary level for anyone to suddenly realize, well, this situation is far too complex for my, relatively speaking, simple thinking of it? There can be fear, but whatever thought is going with the fear will not be new information, that is, to give you some jolt to the system wherein you can think about it and behave differently. Or conversely, be in a situation and say, I am being far too complex now that I realize what's going on for the rather simplistic nature of this situation. I'm being far too complex. Is it possible for an ordinary person to go, well, I'll just stop that? It is as though that they have, with almost no warning, dropped the sacred white elephant into your backyard, which takes up all of your backyard and part of the house, and they go, and they're gone. And you got it. It is both too simple for this complex situation, and it is too complex for this relatively more simplistic situation. It is always ill-timed. If you were faced with the possibility of putting that kind of new chemical information into your own nervous system, as far as your nervous system is concerned, if it could speak and recognize what was going on, it would say, this is not the time to do that. And of course, if it could say that, and you say, well, when will be? And it could tell you something correct, it'd say, probably never. At least not in this lifetime, Charlie. Just don't do that to me, I'm driving. I don't need that. Since I defended talk tonight, I was going to defend, believe it or not, the past. Since I'm sure that some people could think if they'd been observing that I have kicked the past around as well as I have excessive talk, but I guess it got sticky enough already tonight, didn't it? So let me just stop now, but I want to leave you with a stopping thought. Since we had an opening thought, I think it would be well within our expectations. To leave with a leaving thought, to close with a closing thought, and that is, hey, don't laugh, you're next.